had a little chat just before the conference, and we were discussing some of our past facing technology change, and one that it made us think of was when graphic software design arrived in our lives. Somewhere in the 1990s, and suddenly everyone at home with a PC could become a graphic designers. And I remember that time where all the restaurants around my place were starting to have terrible menus, awful graphics, because the son or the cousin or whoever could become the randomness. Are we going to face the same situation here with industrial design as well, with the other fields of design, or are we protected by the complexity that we've now reached in some of the fields that we're in? What are our next days and upcoming moments where this technology now becomes more and more accessible? Do you want to start? Since you started that discussion, so.
There's a use case in our book. It's called Layout Creator by DHL, made by a German agency called Strichpunkt. And what they did is they pretty much solved the problem of a design handbook, because if you're a big company and you need to create your own layout stuff, basically from poster design to brochures to everything, you will definitely have people touching your stuff and designing things that are not capable of designing. So usually this was prevented by giving out a 300 pages design handbook and telling people read it and abide by or comply with the rules written down in this handbook. And it was overwhelming for people because they had no abilities, as you said. And what Strichpunkt did, they transferred the laws of design with the design team, but also with the tech team, and talked about it extensively. How do we teach a machine the rules of design, the basic rules of design? So at the end, they created a product that DHL could use for their non-designers to design everything that they needed to have designed in their company. And it looked like a designer did that. It looked like the basic rules of design were applied, and it was a great success. And I think from this point, you can say that AI is helping you become a better designer, even if you don't have the capabilities. Now the bad news.
Yeah, that's the optimistic side of it. I saw some skepticism around. Yeah.
I don't know if I will be optimistic, but I like, that we all three of us were coming back to similar moment. Not just getting to the Gartner curve, but I remember, like you mentioned, when we started to try to find a standardized process for executing car design. It's the same like for branding guidelines. What was clear is at the time of intensive complexity in the industry, we started to regulate the design process. And it was due to be delivered to anyone, and specifically non-designers. It's basically the standardization. But this is what used to be in modern time. And if I go back to the history of design, immediately the designers were reacting to this particular way of doing design. As soon as design become a guideline, and it's open to others, designers have a reaction. It's being seen in the time, typically radical design. Memphis in the 80s, when car design, by example, became, or project design, was able to be done by a few guidelines, what we call knowledge in a three-dimensional tool like CATIA, SolidWorks, whatever. Well, if it's something the tools predictively give it to you, designers don't consider that as design anymore. And my studio, they don't think AI, DALI, Midjourney, whatever will come, as design. They call it as a tool, and we use the tool. So, because immediately what we do is say, what are we going to do? We're going to hack it, we're going to change it, let's go to the script. That's the design attitude that I was mentioning. So I'm not really optimistic, but I have seen along the way that the designers always had reacted to situations where design gets standardized and regulated for going to. The negative side of it is the acceleration. Is the fact that it's not just like design, the ability to react, just like it goes faster than our human capability to react. We don't have more time to take, pause, and look at wherever is the tools. We use the same, we do but we just need time to reflect. And so it's not about the tools, it's about the fact that we get beyond the space and time that human capabilities are maybe capable of coping with.
Thank you. And while we take other comments, please raise your hand if you want the microphone for the upcoming question that we're looking forward to.
You wanted to say something on this one? Anna wanted to.
So, is this working?
Oui.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I see many different things. So, the first, answering, like, if this randomness will come to physical products, I seriously believe so, because you have now the capability to just like upload online whatever part of thing that you just designed, press a button, get a quotation, get a chip back. So it's a kind of processing and manufacturing that we didn't had before. So this is something already there, already established. In a moment that someone has access to a tool that just generates from an idea a 3D model, he can immediately do it. So yes, there I do really believe that we will have so many products that are not needed. So many. And this is a huge concern, of course, because we are all here always talking about sustainability, but in the end what is more important when some kind of technology comes like this? Is it sustainability or your ego? And this, I'm really interested to see how this is going to evolve, and that's why I think that we do need to have designers as curators. Absolutely, because what AI gives to you from a picture or from a text, it's not something that you should take as granted. Also, what you said before, like in terms even of rights, I mean, from who does this belong? I mean, you really have to have so many kind of concerns when you're putting a product into the market that I really think there you have to be really careful.
Interesting. Thank you. I like the sustainability or ego question. We have a question here, front row to the right of the stage.
Thank you. It was a very interesting discussion. I must say that. But over the years, when the technological development we are seeing, cheaper, better, faster is the image, which you also mentioned that what we were doing earlier is in 10 days, which is possible in half days or so. The question is not product-centric, but more on the point which David mentioned, the more community-centric, more the challenges the world which is facing. Even country like India, where I come from, which is the highest population, you see in this technological development, the 80% money is handled by 20% people, and 20% people are living with 80% of money available. 20% with the remaining money. 80% people living with 20% money, and 20% people having hold of 80% money. So technological development has made a tremendous divide within the society. Now I feel that coming back to the all 10 points which David mentioned, what are the opportunity for designers to look into this high technology? Can we reduce the gap between those who have and those who don't? The climate action that was mentioned, the infrastructure, the education, the public infrastructure, because you see the most of the time the design and technological investments are happening in the industry, the car industry or the luxury industry and all those areas which is happening, who are paying for these services. So how are we going to really create where designer is not working only for a product but more integrating with co-creation with the society, maybe there is a great opportunity, designers with AI for the social innovation.
Thank you. As much a comment as a question, maybe. I don't know if you see in the field, in the tools, ways that we can move beyond sensitization. We've been sensitizing the design community for years. And obviously, we're doing a better and better job at producing more products that keep having important environmental and social impacts. Please.
I like this question because we are really at the tipping point of shifting of what's happening all the time when you have a new technology is this autonomization of that technology. That means that the technology kind of runs on itself. And what you are offering, Brad, is really how to regenerate by design the capability of the technology for the real serious or real challenges of the society. I'm going to give just a concrete example. Ghana, Accra. It's a place in Africa where we are having piles of all of the waste of all of the Western, country. The few that just basically gather the benefits of those technology and the others that are still taking all of the waste of those objects and making a living by just like being the handmade extraction of copper or any material that could be reused, but at the level of the material, at the resource. If you imagine, that's what we do, that with the artificial intelligence we can have the traceability of every materials, of every product that is being produced at any industry. That means even the 2 grams of copper that will end up to this landfill will never get there, first place, because we will be able to identify its value up front, maybe. And if not, and that's what we're doing, you can consider that by bringing high tech into very low tech approach, and if you combine both, that means if you basically not just make high-tech for high-tech purposes, but high-tech for very, very low-tech issues, that is basically how I do product with waste, how I design with waste. You can basically, with I don't want to be commercial, but with a 3-dimensional tool that is very accessible to kids that have even very low education, they may reproduce products that are meaningful for their use, made of waste, with a very profound sense of understanding of how they're being made of. It looks really ambitious, but that's the level of what we have to do. First, we need to stop to work with the resources that are already being extracted. We're going to have to work from the waste we have produced. So the object is always what makes the symbolic moment of connection of a community. When we drink, when we sit, whatever. It's just what was wrong is the industry, the way it's being done. It's this one-hand, linear, take, make, and waste. AI can change that. I'm sure of that. Yet, who is going to be shifting the purpose? The designers. But I would like you to, because we both are very autonomously turning the technology on themselves.
Yes, that's true. Well, I fully agree, and I would say that you can do big changes, and I liked the waste example, where AI can do wonderful things. But I would say it's pretty much like with any technology that came, it needed a certain degree of governmental regulations. We had the biggest change or impact in the 50s was atomic energy, nuclear energy. My father actually majored in physics because of that, because they hoped you had clean, free energy without any side effects. My father dropped out of the job because he knew there's a human element and there will always be side effects. So, and it also gave us the nuclear bomb. and without government regulations, and that's where I see the acceleration as a big challenge for the future. These technologies can do really terrible things as well. And right now we're in a situation where this process has an exponential growth. It's really, really fast. I saw what Midjourney did in the month time and in the last 12 months. It's getting faster and faster, and government regulations can't keep up with that. And that's the big danger. You know, it's out there, and it's open source. It's lovely. There are Midjourney versions. I can play around with it. I can do, but if somebody decides to build on that, he needs probably 10 really, really good programmers, and he can do even more wonderful things. And at some point, somebody will do something terrible with it, and there's absolutely nobody who can prevent that. And that's where I do see a danger at the moment.
You know, we have a French socialist and philosopher, Bernard Stiegler. He used to call technology pharmacon. Pharmacon from pharmacy. It means that it could be the remedy or the poison.
Yeah.
And so design is always navigating. When I was talking about ambiguity before, we are navigating between manipulating the poison that may be, because if you just take a little bit of the poison, it may be the remedies. So the traceability, I like your analogy with the nuclear power. Those data exist. The regulation, the public policy about how we will be becoming more sustainable is by the traceability. Right now, nobody knows where those data are. They don't know how to classify, clusterize. So it's hard to make a policy on theory. So I believe that we are just like testing, changing, like kids, you know, playing around. It's very, it just go very fast. And we just, with regulation, make sure we are experimenting for the good, for the purpose, for the communities, as is being expressed before, than just like having our typical and sometimes design attitude of making fun of our own stuff, right?
Thank you very much. I think we have a question in the back.
So I would like to know your opinion on the future of design education. So now we have AI, but AI is just a tool from my perspective. It's not negative or positive, and we should understand that it's about also the data underneath. And who is bringing these elements in when not designers and creators? And what is the role? So what needs to be educated? It's that designers of the future can define the requirements of a design and select the one that is probably most target-oriented. Is this the role of the designer? Because from my perspective, I really much appreciate the craftsmanship of a designer and bringing the novelty in the ecosystem. So, two questions. So, what is your perspective of the education of a designer in the future and the role of the designers in the profession?
So some of you give lectures.
I can answer, but I don't want to be the one. I will start with one that I have that I'm using a lot is anthropology. It's probably the most further of design. It's actually the closest. We are working for humans. We are working for helping our way of living within an environment. This environment used to be natural, or it never been natural, used to be the way we were living, multiculturalisms, different vision of the world, having a different relationship with Earth, you know, when in Africa, Earth, you cannot own Earth, you know, Earth belongs to everyone. So if today our world is digital, if our world is becoming an hybridation of artificial and human interaction, we need to work with anthropologists, and I've seen that a lot of researchers right now are working not on what we call the primitive people, but actually us trying to figure out our way in digital world. So I think designers will have to receive, as in the past they needed to have philosophy, literacy. We probably need to imagine that designers will have to work more with, they were working with ethnologists, you know, for making those, I mean, that's being a big, huge part of the change in the design education by being, so sociologists. I think anthropologist is to understand. And to your point about craftsmanship and vernacular knowledge, this is something that is also coming to this data world more and more. And not, as I was explaining, because we just want to colonize, I mean, like extracting, you know, the knowledge to the digital. No, it's because it's the only way to make anything that will be produced in the digital to be adopted by human. You need waving, you need to, we're gonna have to reinvent the industry. And reinventing the industry doesn't mean high tech. It means high tech and low tech, I mean, craftsmanship.
Thank you, Anne. I think Sebastian has...
Yeah, I think that the question that you raised is pretty much on everybody's mind, what is left of the designers' jobs, and how do you teach new designers, or how do you teach yourself to adapt. But I think the question is fair and unfair at the same time. Fair is that you think about it, that you know that you have to adapt. Unfair is a little bit because sometimes I feel like people imagine themselves being in the driver's seat when they are not. And with all the jobs, there's always a component of it's out of your hands. You're
powerless, feeling
a little
powerless.
bit of powerlessness, but also, since everything, like technology is no exception, there's a different rule, and you talked about it with your landfill example, that you have an economy that is incentivizing wastefulness. You have an economy that is incentivizing quickness, speed, and not craftsmanship, but something that is like consumed in a very, very quick way. You know, even throwaway culture for visual design or whatever. And I think that we have, as designers, have to be, or design managers have to be careful when assessing these kind of like situation, to not say that everything depends on us. Everything is steerable with design. Everything is manageable with design, because we live in an economic system, capitalism, that is pretty much has its own rules and its own ways of doing. And I think we can ask ourselves, what do we want to do in the future? And there's a bunch of answers, like we can become an anthropologist.
I was not meaning we should work with anthropologists. We should not replacing them.
Yeah, but there's still there's this trend of like design researchers become, in a way, anthropologists. They go out and see what users actually do with the products, and then fill in this environment. But I don't know if you get my drift, but there's this, like, we can answer this the way that we do. It's like by telling you how to adapt, but at the same time, we should take a look at the systems that prevent you from being a craftsman or craftwoman.
Prevent you from experimenting and testing, yes.
I just want to disagree a little bit, to be honest. Let me, to the question of how do we educate designers, I liked one example of Nick Cave. You should read his take on AI. Basically, he's laughing a bit about it, because like, you get all these Nick Cave songs, and his main point that he makes is like, really good music only exists through suffering. Machines can't suffer, so they will only just echo and copy something, but you will never get that feeling as if I'm doing a song. So the most musicians, they don't feel threatened at all, while we designers, we do. I was educated at a school that was quite heavily into more free art direction, and was quite an emphasis on develop your own style and grow your character, basically. It was illustration, really just hand drawing. And I fear if you accept this system and say, okay, I just run as fast as I can and I know I prompt, and you're a young aspiring designer, and you don't go through this school, learn to draw properly, don't learn to have your own drawing style, like develop what size are your drawings best, everybody is an individual there. If you just start prompting, I feel it's a danger for the upcoming designers, and then they will miss out, and then their judgment, if you don't go through the school, will be quite different. And I agree with you, in this age of randomness, everybody can do it. It just gets cheap, and nobody has an expression anymore. So again, I'm more for to have a certain degree of regulation for an education system, and say you're not allowed to touch the computer for the first 2 years. Simply you can't. And then I think that's something that should be explored as well, instead of just running with the masses.
Thank you, and we will start, since we only have a couple of minutes left, we will start with Anna and your answer to this, but also last comments and maybe last thoughts that you would like to share, since we only have 4 or 5 minutes left.
Now you made me confused. So what was I about to say? So again, at the moment, I really see AI as a tool. Not sure where AGI is going to bring us. That's another topic. But let's go step by step and solve the problem from somewhere. We cannot just start from something that we cannot touch. So right now, I see AI as a tool. Therefore, I do think that in schools, you do need to address it. You do need to show it. How you do it, I totally agree with you. Maybe it's not the first year, it's not the first thing you do. Because before you are able to process any kind of information that comes from AI, you have to have a background in ethics, for example. You have to have a background in manufacturing, in production. You have to understand a little bit about this. So yes, please, do educate students with the tools that are there, because that are the tools that they will use in their offices where they are going to be employed. But please be aware not to teach machines, but to teach humans. I think that's very important for the design education. Don't avoid it, go with it. But please understand that first comes the human, the designer, and then comes all the tools that enable you to create something.
Thank you so much, and a good design challenge for Anne in 60 seconds, closing thought.
We're talking about design education. We need to talk about education per se, not design. AI is going to disrupt education entirely. And so the question is really about what was school and education before, mostly learning knowledge, people listening, accumulating diplomas, and to tools or solutions or process that are obsolete in the next day, because DALI or Midjourney is 2 months before they get obsolete. So, so education is going to be disrupted. It's a no-brainer. When? Very soon. Because it's about learning knowledge. And what we need to learn is the way designers actually already learn. Experimenting, researching, looking, hacking, doodling. And we need to actually have design education in education. Actually, that will be my... do you agree?
Totally agree. And
Yes.
I have even a topic for it. I would call it. I think that the teachers, the professors that are involved in education, they also
Curiosity
have to... But they also have to embrace AI. They also have to understand that AI can be something that's really personalized. So instead of having something that's for everyone, it's education for that person. But the one that curates the AI for each student is the professor, is the
human.
teacher.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
I agree.
And in 60 seconds each, Patrik and Sebastian.
Okay. Well, I think I expressed my thoughts. I would vote for staying human in this noisy world. You know, like try to sometimes not use all these tools, and be cool if somebody is just speeding up things. Because the one thing that I think will be most valuable is having this judgment. And then you kind of curate and select but where do you get this judgment from? What makes you a designer who can judge this a bad design from a good design? You need to practice that. That's like a muscle, and that's something you only do by actually being a designer yourself, experimenting yourself and expressing your own character. And otherwise, you're just somebody who's running after machines.
Knowledge is about being
Thank you
human.
so much, Sebastian.
It's about being human.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everything has been said. I think as a design educator, I teach my students to have structural thinking as a tool, and that means it's not destroyed by AI. If you work with ChatGPT, it doesn't give you a sense of structural thinking. You have to have an idea. You have to know how to get to a point where you want to arrive. And this is so important. I think what I take from all of you is that we have to make sure that this is something that stays within our realm as educators, but also as practitioners. And I think that finding the interesting thing that AI can make us better with, or that's weird grammar right now, something that AI can amplify that we already possess as humans. So that would be an interesting thing for me.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Thank you so much to all of you.